Thank you for tuning in to The Voice of Adventure. Today we will continue following Akatu's travels in The Journey of the Chief, Part 4, The Darkest Depths. Akatu stood on the beach staring out at the waters. About 3 weeks had passed since his journey into the desert. Getting out of the desert proved just as difficult as getting in. It was long, hot, and difficult to traverse. But after the desert came the endless woods. At least the woods provided shade. Akatu walked and walked, then walked some more, and finished by walking even farther. All he had seen until now were just trees, until one day a cool breeze blew through. This breeze felt exactly like the one that passed through his village. It had the same cool, refreshing feel and salty smell. Finally he had emerged from the forest and stood on the edge of the seashore. Traveling the last 3 weeks had given Akatu plenty of time to think about his conversation at the temples, all of which still confused and frustrated him. His world was shaken in the first temple, when he found out the 4 gods his village worshipped weren't real. Part of him was rejoicing, since he didn't believe in them anyway, especially after they took his friend away. However, he grew up learning about these gods, and even if he didn't believe in them, they were closely tied to everything his village did. Then there was the introduction of the One Above. With so many questions, he had found his way to the second temple, where he heard that the One Above is always with us, helping us. But if he is always there helping us, why did his best friend Amit get chosen? He didn't possess the ability or drive to become chief, yet the One Above allowed him to be chosen? Akatu still wrestled with his friend's death, and the more he learned about the One Above, the angrier he became, since he had done nothing to stop it. He turned his attention back to the present. His journey to the third temple was about to truly begin. But first, Akatu needed to find a way to sail this ocean. Akatu took stock of his surroundings. There was an endless quantity of trees, perfect for building a raft. Akatu took out his machete and started cutting down the trees around him. It was slow work, especially because his machete was not designed for this. Over the course of a couple days, Akatu cut down enough trees to assemble his raft. He fastened the logs together with some sturdy vine-like plants and erected a mast, ready to hold the sail. But the sail was his biggest problem. Every other part of the raft could be easily made from the materials around him, but a usable sail would take weeks of weaving the leaves that he had available. Would that sail even be strong enough to hold against the strong winds of the ocean? After tying his raft to the nearest tree, Akatu walked the beach for miles, hoping to find something that would work as a sail. The sun fell low in the sky, and Akatu was about to turn back, when he saw a few old boats that had washed up on the beach. He thought it odd to see the boats here on the shore. There was no evidence that people had lived anywhere nearby. So where did these boats come from? Akatu ran down the beach, hoping that they might have something he could use as a sail. As he approached, he realized the boats were ginormous. His village had some small fishing boats, but these were many times larger. They sat on the beach, marooned long ago. The wood rotted from the weather, leaving many holes in the bottom. Akatu walked around studying the boats. He didn't recognize the design. They were different from how his village made boats, and Akatu didn't know any villages outside of his own. So where had these boats come from? Walking around the boats, he saw a broken mast laying on the beach, but the sail was in great condition, especially compared to the rest of the boat. Akatu stood there stunned, amazed even. That sail looked so good. Somehow the sail survived this long in the elements while the boat was falling apart. It felt too good to be true. Akatu quickly grabbed the sail, running back to his raft excitedly, while the last bits of light faded. Finding this sail saved him so much time. He now didn't need to painstakingly weave plants together to make one, and didn't have to worry if it could hold up on the ocean. It was a true miracle that he found a usable sail, and in such great condition. He could sleep easily tonight. Tomorrow he would sail the ocean and find Aquela's temple. Morning couldn't come soon enough. Akatu was so excited to set out on the ocean that he put up the sail before the sun rose. For the first time since he left his village, Akatu felt like he was set up for success. As the morning light rose over the calm water, Akatu pushed his raft into the gentle waves. He paddled out and soon lost the beach through the horizon. The ocean breeze felt soothing to Akatu. The sound of water splashing on his raft, the warm sun shining down on him, and the quiet stillness of it all. It felt like home. As Akatu sat there taking it all in, he remembered the words Chief Burza had said about finding Aquela's temple. Aquela's temple is where the water falls beneath the water. What could that even mean? How can water fall beneath the water? Akatu sat on his raft trying to figure out this riddle. Getting nowhere, he continued sailing off to the east, figuring he could find the temple eventually. After the initial thrill of sailing ended, it proved to be lonesome. Although Akatu had been traveling by himself for some time now, sailing the sea felt different. Before walking through the forest, he would see all types of animals scurrying around. Even though they ran, it gave him a sense of companionship, so he never felt alone. But now, being on the open sea, there was nothing. He saw the occasional fish swim by, but even that was rare. It was just him and the ocean. The sun slowly moved across the sky, but it was not great for conversation. It didn't make any sound and was difficult to look at. All he heard for days was this raft creaking and the water knocking against it. He felt truly alone. The days dragged on, and there was nothing new, nothing exciting, nothing to help pass the time. Just him and the vastness of the ocean. After days of this, Akatu felt like he was going insane. If something didn't change soon, he would not make it to the next temple. He would have to give up on finding the temple for his own sanity. Then he remembered meeting Vergon and Samota, and the reason he had to find all the temples. He thought how their only hope of returning to the village lay in Akatu's hands. Akatu started recalling his conversation with the wind creature at Ventos' temple. The creature had told Akatu that the one above is always with him and that he always gives his peace. Akatu laid on the raft feeling everything except peace. There was anxiety, stress, worry, fear, fleeting hope, but no peace. Reaching the end of his rope, Akatu spoke out loud. "Hey, one above, if you're truly always here with me, then show yourself. Please." He lay there for a while, waiting for the one above to show up, but no one came. And nothing changed in his surroundings. He even tried to listen to his spirit, although he still didn't understand what that meant. But still nothing. Giving up on that, Akatu fell asleep, feeling lonelier than before. Suddenly, Akatu was awoken by a wave of cold water hitting his face. He jumped up, startled, only to notice that he was entering a huge storm. Too late to steer away, he tried to secure anything that would be swept away, then laid down and held on tight. Waves crashed over his raft, trying to tear it apart. His raft tossed and turned, being thrown around by the waves. It took all of Akatu's strength not to be swept off and pulled into the ocean. With every wave, Akatu could feel his sail slowly coming loose and his mast cracking. Unable to move for fear of falling off, Akatu watched as his sail was blown away by the wind, and soon after his mast broke from the crashing waves, almost hitting Akatu on his way down. Now he had no way to navigate the ocean, and no hope in making a new sail. Akatu's heart dropped. Tears mixed with the rain on his face. He felt so alone, and now he had no way of escaping this ocean. He lay there in the storm, wondering if it was even worth holding on. He could just give in to the storm and let it carry him away from the pain and sorrow he felt. He could end his journey here and join the countless children who had died on this journey. But for some reason, he couldn't let go. If the temples taught him anything, the one above should have been here with him. The one above should have protected him in the storm. If it's true that he made everything, then he could easily calm the storm or guide Akatu's raft safely through it. If he is always here, then where was he in the storm? Where was his protection and peace? Akatu lay there sobbing, feeling abandoned in the storm. Tears streamed down his face, and eventually the storm passed. Akatu had survived it, but at what cost? He had lost his only way to navigate the ocean. Akatu laid face down as the sun warmed his back. A small wave gently splashed against his raft. Surviving didn't matter anymore. Akatu had lost his hope. With no sail, he was at the mercy of the ocean, and based on the storm, the ocean had no mercy. He drifted for days, baking in the sun. Akatu was just waiting for it to end. He had struggled and tried to find the temples, but it was all in vain. He would soon die at sea. Another child from Silo village dying to fulfill their stupid chief trials. When will his sorrow end? When will death come and take him away? Akatu could only sit and wait. One day, as Akatu continued to prepare his deathbed, he heard the roar of rushing water. He slowly sat up, curious as to what the ocean was throwing at him now. He saw nothing, just the emptiness of the ocean. Akatu was about to lay back down when all of a sudden his raft jerked forward and sped up. He barely managed to grab the raft before it sped off in a strong current. Holding on for dear life, he managed to look forward to see a giant whirlpool ahead. His raft was being sucked in at incredible speed. Looking around, he saw evidence of a giant sinkhole and water on every side of him falling under the whirlpool. Had he found where he needed to go? But how could this be the location of the temple? Akatu's grip battled the pool of the whirlpool. He was barely able to hang on. Was hanging on even the thing to do? Without time to think, his raft was pulled to the center and sucked down deep into the ocean with him on it. He lost his grip and was separated from his raft. Akatu spun wildly before being dragged even deeper. He couldn't breathe. The whirlpool flung him out, but he was surrounded by water, and the surface was far away. Just as he was about to accept his fate, he saw a light shimmering nearby. Desperately, he swam to it. He surfaced. Akatu filled his lungs with air, overjoyed that he could breathe again. A huge wave of relief came over Akatu. He thought he was prepared for death, but when it came time to die, he still resisted and struggled to survive. He floated on the surface of the water, but there wasn't a sky above him. He was in an underwater cave. Rock walls curled up to a giant yellowish crystal hanging from the ceiling. The crystal emanated light similarly to the small blue stones Akatu had seen near Tarandra's temple, but on a much larger scale. The light filled the room, casting strong shadows. Looking around, Akatu couldn't find any ground to stand on. He was in the middle of this dome, treading water, slowly losing strength with every stroke. Eventually he noticed a small waterfall slowly streaming into the cave. Swimming closer, he saw something behind the waterfall. Eagerly he swam closer, hoping it was at least a ledge for him to stand on. Behind the waterfall, Akatu found a small passageway, a nice place to rest his weary body. He pulled himself onto a ledge and just laid there. His aching body needed rest before he continued. Plus, he needed time to process what just happened to him. He had asked the one above for help, and what did he do? He sent a storm that took out Akatu's sail and mast. The one above just let him drift at sea for days with no indication that he was guiding the raft where it needed to go. Then the one above just threw Akatu into a whirlpool. Akatu had no chance to escape its pull. With no sail to change direction, there was no chance Akatu could have dodged the whirlpool. And now he was in this underwater cave, with little to no hope of getting out. Why would he do this to me? I thought he was supposed to be for me. Why would he take me into a storm, down a whirlpool, and leave me in this cave? Akatu thought. He lay there for a while, knowing that the one above wouldn't answer his questions. If he didn't show himself before, why would he show himself now? Eventually, Akatu gathered his strength, got up, and explored further into the passageway. The passageway was extremely dark. The light from the domed cave could barely reach this far in the tunnel. After a few minutes, Akatu had to navigate using only his hands. He stumbled and fell over every bump and step, until finding a wall at the end of the tunnel. He felt around for a while, expecting the passageway to continue somewhere, but it was sealed off. About to give up and turn around, Akatu knocked over some loose stones. A beam of light shone through the hole, providing a tiny bit of light to Akatu. He quickly moved stone after stone, expanding the hole until it was big enough for him to crawl through. On the other side, Akatu was met with a giant room. Just like the last one, it had a domed ceiling with glowing crystals embedded in the walls. There was no floor in this room, just deep, salty water, which was only broken by an altar in the middle of the room. It sat on a pedestal with several steps leading up to it. Swimming over to the altar, Akatu noticed the walls were plain cave walls. In the other temples, the walls were covered with depictions of their respective gods. But there was nothing here, just blank walls. He pulled himself onto the pedestal. Reaching the altar, Akatu slowly put his hand on it, ready for the monster to come out. Nothing happened. He stood there dumbfounded for a moment. Maybe he touched the wrong spot? Akatu stood at the altar, trying to figure out the correct way to summon the monster of this temple. While this was happening, the water surrounding the altar began to swirl. Just like the whirlpool, it spun around with crazy speed, forcing the water away from the altar. Akatu heard the roar of the current and watched as the water inched higher and higher on the walls until it looked like a giant wave about to crash onto him. Suddenly, the water stopped. It didn't fall. It just floated above him, motionless. After a few minutes, the water slowly coalesced, forming a large humanoid form, a female figure. Only her torso, arms, and head sat above the water. Long flowing hair, if you could call it that, it was just water after all, fell from her head, covering her chest. The rest of her body was under the water that had filled the room again. Akatu felt tiny as this woman towered over him. "I see a visitor has found their way to this temple." Akatu stood there, too shocked to speak. He expected to see a monster here. He was prepared for that. But he was not ready to meet a beautiful woman made of water. "Are you that surprised to see me? I see you have been to 2 other temples." She pointed at Akatu's tattoo. Sorry, Akatu took a second to collect his thoughts before speaking again. Sorry about that. You really surprised me. The previous ones I've met didn't look so human." "Oh, I see." The water lady leaned forward, crossing her arms and resting them on the rippling water. "So tell me, what brings you all the way down to this temple?" "I started learning about the one above in the last 2 temples, and I was hoping you could tell me more about him." "Did they not explain it well?" the water woman asked, leaning in closer. "They told me a bit, but I still don't feel like I know much about him. I was also told that the one above chose me for something, and that my tattoo looks different as a sign of that, but I still don't know what I've been chosen to do." Akatu felt confused. The one above seemed to have a plan, but never let Akatu in on it. "The one above works in mysterious ways. You see, the one above can see everything. He's not just everywhere, but also in all time. He sees your beginning, your trials, and your ending at the same time. He has laid out plans to make you into the best version of yourself. If the one above has a plan laid out for me, why doesn't he let me in on this plan? Why keep it a secret? If I know what's coming, I can prepare and step into what he wants me to be." Akatu felt frustrated because if the one above had a plan laid out, why would he let Akatu almost die multiple times on this journey? The water lady leaned closer to Akatu and spoke very gently. "He He wants your trust. Akatu slowly stepped back, thinking to himself, he wants my trust? Doesn't trust go both ways? Akatu looked up at the water lady and asked, if he just wanted my trust, wouldn't it be better for him to show me what's up ahead, so that I know he has planned for me well? That's not the kind of trust he wants. If you only trust him when you see his plan, how is that trust? Instead of trusting him, you are trusting the plan. The water lady paused, letting Akatu process her words. The one above wants you to have faith and trust he has your best interests at heart. So I'm just supposed to trust him and give up control over my life? This didn't sit right with Akatu. How could giving up control lead to a better life? When he had lost his sail in the storm, Akatu had no control over his raft. It drifted at the mercy of the ocean. And where did it lead him? Down into a whirlpool with no avenue of escape. Yes, if you give your life to the one above, he will lead you to a meaningful life. It may get harder, but you will find peace knowing that the one above saw this coming and is having it lead you to your future. Akatu felt confused, just like at the other temples. He had hoped by now he would have an understanding as to who the one above was. But even at this temple, he had more questions than answers. Sadly, we are out of time. I hope that helps you understand the one above more. But I have more questions, Akatu interrupted. I know you do, but I am not able to reveal everything about him to you. You must seek him out and learn from him directly. Akatu looked disappointed, but had no rebuttal. He just had to accept that continuing his journey would reveal more about the one above. Stretch out your left hand. Akatu did so, knowing what was coming. The water lady came closer and shrunk down to his size, putting one hand on Akatu's right shoulder and the other hand on Akatu's outstretched hand. In the name of the one above, I bestow you the mark of water, our ever-flowing guiding stream. Intense heat traveled up his arm and settled into his shoulder. Akatu had gotten used to this feeling, and the burning quickly faded. Looking at his tattoo, he saw multiple crashing waves, and imagined himself hanging onto a raft in the midst of those waves. The water lady stepped back and said, Good luck on your journey to the last temple. Trust the one above and his plan. With that, the water lady jumped backwards and disappeared into the water. Akatu stood there for a couple minutes, taking in everything he just heard. As he started moving, preparing for his journey to the last temple, he looked around and asked, how am I supposed to get out of here? Thanks for listening to The Voice of Adventure. Make sure you keep up with the adventures by following The Voice of Adventure on Spotify and Amazon Music. Also, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Josiah the Author to know when new episodes are being released and see some behind the scenes. Let the adventure continue.